We occasionally have to choose between doing what we believe to be right and following the rules. When a kind Canadian server saw a homeless man outside of her place of employment, she found herself torn between her obligations to her employer and other people's needs. The waitress started preparing meals for him after deciding to help him, even though it might cost her her job. Finally, his identity made clear how crucial it is to assist those in need. At one of Canada's top restaurants, Cindy served customers. Customers expected only the best food because this restaurant had 2 Michelin stars. Cindy had dreams of working in the kitchen, despite the fact that she was a server. She had been pursuing culinary studies. Her job gave her the opportunity to gain some experience while also to help pay for her education. All of that changed, though, when she saw a homeless man close to her place of employment. Cindy took the same route to the restaurant each day. She frequently observed a homeless person seated in the same location close to the store. He sat in the same place no matter what the weather was. Although he never expressed it to anyone, the man seemed lonely to Cindy. He would smile and say hello to people as they passed by if they reciprocated. He never requested assistance or money as far as Cindy could tell. All he wanted to do was talk. Cindy thought this was admirable, but she also thought the man must be trying to hide his emotions, so she continued to watch. Cindy had observed that many of the people passing this man on the street were unfriendly, and some of them were downright rude. It happened all the time that people would pass by him without even noticing him. Sometimes an entire day would go by without anyone approaching him for conversation. Cindy once witnessed a group of young men spitting into the man's cup, which she found puzzling. She started to worry about the guy. Cindy's workplace attracted wealthy visitors who could easily afford to spend several $100s per night because it was a Michelin star restaurant. Cindy found it hard to accept this. After all, just around the corner lived a man who was homeless and spent his days on the street. The gap between the rich and the poor had painfully become apparent to her. However, how could she assist the man? Cindy came to the realization that she could, despite the danger, assist the homeless man. She didn't necessarily enjoy her job, but she had to work in order to pay her bills, put money aside for college, and gain experience in the food industry. However, she felt that it was unfair for people to spend hundreds of dollars on upscale cuisine when someone in need was only a few dozen feet away. Cindy started making plans, even though she might lose her job. Cindy thought she could sneak some food from the kitchen and make the man something to eat. Cindy had to remain invisible, though, if she was to assist him. Unfortunately, the restaurant chef was on the floor and was audible through the entire establishment. All the ingredients were of the highest caliber and were priced accordingly, as one might anticipate from a restaurant with a Michelin star. Nobody was ever able to discover what she was doing. She believed it was the right thing to do despite the fact some people might be against her stealing from her place of employment. She still struggled with the moral dilemma of stealing versus causing suffering to another person. Cindy ultimately viewed it as a Robin Hood-like method of stealing from the wealthy to help someone in need. Nevertheless, Cindy was well aware that stealing from the restaurant was illegal despite her good intentions. Cindy made the decision to carry out her plan despite feeling fear engulf her. After all, the man was alone and needed assistance. She waited until she heard the chef yell at the kitchen staff so she could pinpoint his location. She seized the chance to skulk toward the freezer. She inched closer, feeling more and more justified in what she was doing as her boss persisted in making the other workers' lives miserable. Cindy eventually made it to the freezer without letting anyone know. She swiftly perused the shelves in search of ingredients that nobody would overlook. Cindy made her choices and then successfully stowed about 20 ingredients in her bag. Cindy knew the absolute minimum she would need to bring to prepare a meal for the homeless man outside, despite the fact that this might seem excessive to some. Cindy was about to succeed when she abruptly heard a loud knock at the freezer door. Cindy was sliced by fear like a knife. The end was here. Both her job and her life would be lost because she had been discovered. Only the chef was permitted to spend time alone in the freezer. All other kitchen employees had to have a witness present to attest to their reliability and deter theft. Cindy had attempted to steal the food despite being aware of the dangers. However, she was beginning to realize the reality of her predicament. Cindy had no choice of escaping the chilly room because someone was standing at the only exit. She understood that she wouldn't be able to continue her culinary studies, even if she could. She would never be able to work in the culinary industry due to her reputation as a thief. However, a strange thing occurred as she screamed in fear. Cindy struggled to gain control of her thoughts as she leaned against a wall. She leaned against a wall that had been steadily deteriorating for years and had grown incredibly frail. Cindy was thrown over the other side of the wall when it could no longer support her weight. Cindy quickly glanced around, unsure of how she got there, and prepared for the worst. Cindy ended up in one of the few places where she could remain unnoticed out of all the possibilities. She had been dropped into a deserted, covered hallway where only servers frequently moved. Just in time to hear the chef, Cindy covered the hole in the wall with a serving tray, walked into the chilly room. She couldn't believe her good fortune. She quickly sprinted home with the supplies, dodging any potential witnesses' eyes. Cindy wasn't able to catch her breath or comprehend what she had done until she got home. She took a brief break after realizing her success to move on to the next part of her plan. Cindy used her still developing culinary skills to spend more than 2 hours preparing a meal for the homeless man close to her place of employment. She hit the streets after securing her freshly prepared meal and went right to the homeless man's usual location. She gave him the meal and some money so he could get anything else he might need. The man was in utter disbelief. He had never received the kind of treatment that Cindy did. Even though Cindy had earlier experienced a great deal of anxiety and fear, she later realized that doing this was the right thing to do and that she wasn't going to stop there. Cindy was aware that one meal would not be sufficient. Cindy brought the man meals every day for the remainder of the week, feeling proud of her deeds. The man adored her delectable meals and couldn't have been happier. Every detail was ideal. The chef then knocked on her door one day. Cindy immediately panicked when she saw her boss at the door because she knew that he'd caught her. She briefly considered refusing to let him in, but he had already noticed her and wouldn't be deterred. Cindy opened the door cautiously, her hands shaking with fear. The chef was incensed. The moment he saw the hole in the wall and the tray she had used to conceal it, he knew she was to blame. The chef went to look at the security footage after locating the tray to see what had happened. Cindy had been caught on camera hiding in the cold storage area, along with her bag of now missing ingredients. Cindy didn't even have a chance to speak before her boss fired her and started lecturing Cindy for the next 15 minutes about obeying instructions and keeping up appearances. His tirade was barely audible to Cindy because she was preoccupied with the consequences of her actions. Cindy went by the restaurant where she had worked the day before. She cast a glance out the windows and began to feel regret and doubt. She tried to leave but couldn't get her mind off the homeless man who was still sitting in his usual spot. The man waited silently, as he did every day, for someone to talk to him. Cindy then made the decision to speak. The man immediately recognized Cindy's distress and inquired as to why she appeared so dejected. He was horrified after she gave him an explanation of the situation. He remarked on her amazing culinary skills and expressed shock that any restaurant would dare to let someone with such a talent go. The man made the decision to act himself after telling her that it was a great loss to the culinary industry. He entered the restaurant in a furious rage. The chef was furious when he saw a homeless man crashing through the doors. He hurried over to the homeless man and demanded that he and Cindy leave right away. The incensed chef yelled at the homeless man, declaring that people of his kind were not welcome in such a high-class restaurant, while hurling epithets like filthy and dirty. But as soon as the homeless man revealed his true identity, the roles were swiftly reversed. The homeless man laughed softly after the chef stopped shouting. "Really? Do you not remember who I am?" the chef questioned, and took off his filthy coat. Unsightly clothing was hidden by a sharp suit. It appeared as though the man had completely changed to onlookers. He no longer looked like a man who frequented the streets. He merely had the same appearance as the other patrons in the restaurant. Cindy's jaw dropped as she fixed her gaze on the man. He went on to describe what had happened. He was never a homeless person. He was actually a food critic who had recently visited the establishment and was horrified by how much the standard had declined. The quality of the food was much lower than one would expect from an establishment with 2 Michelin stars, despite the excellent service. He made the decision to follow his instincts, even though he knew the chef must be at fault. He continued by saying that he had recently become the restaurant's new owner after buying the majority of the company's shares. He made the decision to keep an eye on the establishment from a distance. watching as customers and employees came and went. He quickly realized that the restaurant chef was an ineffective manager who was ruining the company. He turned to the chef and immediately dismissed him, blaming his nearly inedible food and poor leadership. The man spoke with Cindy after ejecting her former boss from the establishment. He remarked that the meal she had prepared for him had some of the best flavors and creative recipes he had tested in a long time. Now that the chef position was available, he made her an offer. Cindy found it difficult to believe what she was seeing. She only had to say yes to receive everything she had ever wanted. Did she have a dream? Was this a joke, though? Regardless, before anyone could interject and ruin the moment, she screamed yes out loud. Now that Cindy is the restaurant chef and manager, the kitchen is run much more efficiently than it was under her predecessor. All because of a little bit of kindness from other people. She was able to realize her dreams and is now working at what she loves. Helping those in need and having an open heart will eventually help you.